24 July 2023. This news flash I'm going to talk about ESKOM. Early this morning, the following was posted on our neighborhood electricity watch group. Daily Investor. ESKOM must upgrade its grid, Briekmerke. Written by Sean Jacobs, 23 July 2023. ESKOM must invest significant capital in upgrading its transmission network and battery storage technology for renewable energy projects to come online and solve the country's energy crisis. This is according to the Vice President of the New Development Bank, Leslie Maasdorp, who spoke to the SABC about the bank's role in assisting South Africa to end load shedding. The New Development Bank, commonly known as the Briekmerke, has a capital base of $50 billion to invest in projects among its member nations. Maasdorp reiterated the bank's commitment to helping South Africa address its electricity shortfalls by investing in renewable generation projects. And just there, I nearly flipped my lid. And I'm going to try not to swear too much in this article because I think people would like to share the bloody thing. A day ago, my Mr. X sent me this interesting article. ESKOM and the Office of the Minister of Electricity recently announced that Power Utility will be spending an estimated 210 billion rand to build transmission lines, which will connect the remote power generating solar plants and wind farms located in parts of the Northern and Western Cape. And the article was written, Power Transmission, by Mthunzi A. Luthuli. Mthunzi A. Luthuli is the CEO of the Economic Interventions Forum of South Africa. Now I need you to brace yourself because I'm going to read a lot. And I believe that it is important that I read the whole article to you. This article is not freely available. ESKOM and the Office of the Minister of Electricity recently announced that the power utility would be spending an estimated 210 billion rand to build transmission lines, which will connect the remote power generating solar plants and wind farms located in parts of the Northern and Western Cape. This is a huge cost simply to connect renewables. The price tag is not to generate electricity, which highlights the real cost of renewables to the South African economy. At the outset, I have to mention that I, together with many of my colleagues who share the opinions contained herein, are not climate denialists. Neither are we anti-renewables. On the contrary, we always welcome the use of new viable technologies because we are engineers. We are trained to think this way. We are also technology neutral. Our principle is that policies and solutions to our energy problems have to make technical, economical, social, and environmental sense. Renewable energy technologies have their place and appropriate application in South Africa's energy mix. However, they are currently being deployed far too aggressively and irresponsibly in South Africa. This will have major repercussions for our country as demonstrated below. One can build 2 conventional 6-pack power stations with 210 billion rand if one plans and executes those projects efficiently. But instead of building power generation capacity, we are building costly transmission lines. Right now, our country needs electricity, megawatts, not transmission lines. What's worse is that government wants to build these transmission lines to connect solar and wind plants that have capacity factors that range between 25 and 32%. A capacity factor is the ratio of energy that was actually produced by a solar or wind plant to the amount of energy that plant could have produced in a specified time period, given the plant's rated output power. It is often measured over a period of 1 year, and 25% and 30% are indeed very low capacity factors, sadly. The financial equivalent of a capacity factor is asset utilization. And as we know, a low asset utilization factor means a low return on investment. It makes absolutely no sense for the government and ESKOM to spend 210 billion rand on transmission lines that will be used only 25% of the time. It is also a waste of much needed financial resources that could be used to create jobs, facilitate the establishment of real businesses that will contribute towards growing the economy, etc. Our policymakers are so deep into this renewables gospel that they can't even see, or perhaps they do see but ignore, the glaringly obvious paradoxes of their policies. 210 billion is a lot of money. For the government and ESKOM to waste it on this manner is a tragedy. Sadly, the cost of this wastage will be borne by ordinary citizens, South African households and businesses. This will have the effect of raising electricity prices yet again, and unnecessarily so. An increase in electricity prices raises inflation, leading to higher food prices and higher costs of producing goods and services. The resultant high food prices will plunge the poorest among us into even deeper levels of poverty. The increased cost of production will render South African companies' prices uncompetitive in their markets. This inability to compete will mean that they will lose customers and whole markets in certain regions, which will compel them to reduce production. Production curtailment in any factory means fewer workers are needed, which leads to retrenchments and higher levels of unemployment. We all know that our society already faces unprecedented unemployment levels. The last thing we need is more retrenchment of workers. The other major socioeconomic costs of renewables that fall into this category are related to the closing down of coal-fired power stations, related to the so-called Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, JET-IP. In upcoming articles, I will write in more detail about what exactly this JET-IP means for our country. Staying with the techno-economic costs of renewables, it is important to highlight the fact that increased penetration of renewables reduces the stability and reliability of the grid. In extreme cases, this leads to grid collapse. Electricity Minister Kokshientsho Ramagopa mentioned that in his visit to Vietnam, he learned that the aggressive push to build utility-scale renewable plants in that country has led to exactly these stability problems. Well, the minister didn't have to go to Vietnam to learn this. Many of us have been cautioning about this risk for quite some time now, right here in South Africa. The weakness of the grid due to the increased penetration of renewables is due to the loss of system inertia. Conventional power plants have massive rotating turbines and generator stators. This rotational inertia makes the grid robust in less susceptible network faults and other power system disturbances. The result is a more stable and reliable grid, with fewer operational headaches and costs. When renewables replace conventional power plants, system inertia is lost, leading to an unstable and less reliable grid. A less reliable grid is obviously a serious risk and a threat to the country, and in order to mitigate this loss of the inertia, more costs have to be incurred in installing synchronous condensers and other spinning reserves at various points of locations on the grid in order to add back some of that lost system inertia. These costs can be significant depending on the extent of the penetration of renewables. The loss of system inertia, together with the transmission costs of connecting low capacity factor intermittent renewables, are just but two of the many hidden technical costs of renewables. These technical costs have to be borne directly by the utility, in our case, ESKOM, but as demonstrated above, they also have major concomitant socioeconomic costs. The above is a systems thinking approach to analyzing the likely impacts of policy decisions. It is one of the best ways of evaluating the government's policy decisions. It is inconceivable that our politicians do not see these potentially disastrous consequences of their decisions. And even if they didn't think about them initially, these risks, many of which will definitely materialize, have been highlighted to them enough times for them to rethink their policies, strategies and plans. But they are proceeding down the renewables path regardless, and at full speed for that matter. The question is, why? Well, I also have that same question. The reality is, this renewable thing has got a lot of issues locked up in the dark cupboards of the main players, in their furniture, in their closets, under their beds. That's where you will find the motivations. And our president has got family members directly benefiting from renewables. And we have seen what renewables can do. Here in South Africa, we're a little bit behind the time. We are now being showered with a renewable shit. But Germany is a good example for you. They are taking our coal now desperately to keep their coal power fire stations running. They went onto that green path and it failed. Nobody in South Africa, not one of the journalists in South Africa, has got the guts to really publish the truth behind renewables, the nightmare behind windmills, the fact that nowhere in the whole world has any wind farm ever been profitable. And many of those has already reached end of life, and we're sitting with heaps of scrap that cannot be recycled. But they don't tell you. In Australia, there's now one woman that is talking about what's going on there. In Australia, the government is financing that wind farms by increasing the cost of the electricity, because the wind farms cannot produce at a profit. They cannot. The farmer gets a cut of the money for the windmills on his land, and the company that got the windmill contract takes the bulk of it. Something like 90% of the capital they take. So, South Africa, all of you, those of you that are so quick to run into the streets and start protesting about stupid things and then burn buildings down and things like that, you better go and get a grip on this government, the officials that are stealing us blind and putting our lives into misery while they make all the bucks. You must listen to this again and again and again until you really understand how they are screwing us. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. Thank you for your support.